Let's talk about K-Pop Demon Hunters. This movie has easily become one of the hottest films of 2025 with a 96% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, I think it's well deserved. For those of you who don't know, K-Pop Demon Hunters is a movie about these three girls who are part of a band called Huntrix, and they basically hunt demons with the power of their voice and some really cool weapons. And their goal is to seal the Honmun, or the Soul Gate, in order to prevent the demons from basically escaping from the underworld and wreaking havoc on the living world. Guys, this movie is actually so good. And I know I say that about a lot of things that I review on this channel, but truly, this movie was incredible. There are so many things that align with Islamic values that I noticed just watching this film, and I think a lot of them, if you know about them, it's very clear and very obvious. And honestly, just from like a religious standpoint in general, I think there's just so many lessons to be learned and things I wanted to talk about today. But before we get into the more religious aspects of the film, I wanted to give just like a general review of the film as well. The funny thing is, I didn't really have an intention of watching it. I didn't know what it was about going into it, apart from the title, which, you know, you can basically assume what the plot is going to be. My sister actually kept pestering me to watch it, and I was like, fine, whatever. So we started watching it. She knocked out, and I ended up finishing the film because I was just so drawn to it, and it was amazing. No regrets whatsoever. So let's get into it because there's a lot to talk about. Okay, so let's talk about the idea of belonging. Lovely. I love that the film gave each of the girls something that they were a bit ashamed about, something that they tried to hide. There was a part of themselves that they thought was wrong and that needed to be changed or masked in some sort of way. So for Rumi, that was obviously her demon marks. For Zoe, it was that feeling of never really belonging to a certain place, whether it be in America or Korea. And I'm pretty sure it's canon that she was actually bullied when she was in school. She was always considered too much. She was very bubbly, she was very energetic, and she had to kind of tone it down a bit for others. And at the same time, she was also afraid of conflict. Mira was the problem child. She was short-fused, aggressive, as she says, and just generally the black sheep of the family because she refused to be amiable and submissive. So each of the girls would then hide their flaws. They would mask them in some way. So Mira would put on this facade of strength, and I'm not saying it was a facade all the time. However, she rarely was vulnerable. We really only see her being vulnerable after they had the argument about takedown, which I'll get into in a second. And so Zoe, she naturally pushed down her bubbliness, unless she was around the girls, of course. But she was also a people pleaser, because if she could people please, then it would reduce conflict. And then naturally Rumi was physically covering herself. She was hiding the marks, wasn't showing them to anyone. And she wanted to show the girls initially, but then obviously we saw Celine saying, no, you can't. Wait till we seal the Honmun. And I think to a sense, we see that all of their characteristics that they're told to be kind of ashamed of or that they try to hide were all things that society or the adults in their lives told them was wrong. And I think it was especially hard for Rumi because she was trained her whole life to hate demons, to hunt demons, but half of her was demon. Imagine the kind of turmoil that puts on a child who's just trying to figure out themselves. Half of their identity they've been taught to hide and push down and ignore. So though society views the girls' faults as something shameful, that's not the case when they're with each other. We see after that argument that they have on the train, when they're battling the demons and they're arguing with each other about takedown, that when they're back at the apartment, they sit down and they talk. They're like, this song can't even bring us together. How is it going to bring our fans together? And then they talk about their own faults and their struggles and their vulnerabilities, and it brings them closer, and they reconcile and they decide, okay, we're going to do Golden, because Golden is a song about who we are. You know, we were sort of ostracized and put down for the things that made us different, and look, now that's kind of what brings us our success. And then one of the most emotional scenes was when Rumi goes to Celine after the whole Idol Awards, and the girls find out that Rumi is part demon, and she's basically begging Celine to take her life because she's like, no, I'm gonna destroy the very thing I swore to protect. And then Celine's like, heck no, I try to protect you and raise you and accept you. Ooh, did you though? And then Rumi lashes out at Celine and she's like, why can't you look at me? Why couldn't you love me? And she's like, I do, all of me. Like, we need a let me take 5. That scene actually was so beautifully done, I'm not gonna lie. And apparently there was a song what are you talking about? There was a song, but they didn't include it. I saw a TikTok comment and it kind of gave me an idea about how Celine viewed the whole situation. And basically her whole life she was raised to allegedly, and I say allegedly because I saw a theory that maybe they weren't ever taught to hunt demons but to save them. That's a whole theory, but you know, I honestly kind of agree with it. But anyways, let's just go with the idea that from what we know from this film, they were all taught to hunt demons. When she sees that child as half of something that she was born to hate, obviously I feel like there's going to be a bit of a struggle, but I think it shows that good and evil, they sometimes mix and blend, especially within people. Even when Rumi confronts her, she's saying like, oh no, we'll hide it, we'll just say it was an illusion by Guima to separate us, to divide us. But she's still putting these views on Rumi that she needs to be ashamed of who she is. And also, I think that if Rumi was fully demon, Celine totally would have hunted her. But Rumi's half-demon side shows the side of humans that is imperfect, the side that sins, the side that makes mistakes. It shows just how much more human we are. Like, humans are imperfect by nature. We are imperfect beings. But when we see Rumi's demonic side, when it is expressed, because it's been suppressed for so long, it's very wild, it's uncontrolled. And I think that shame just kind of fuels that fire. So whenever, like, she's a relatively calm character, she hardly ever lashes out. So when we do see it, it's typically her demon side taking over. And you hear that like low, gravelly, demonic echo whenever she kind of shouts. And it's when like she slams her fist onto the ground, we see the Honmun like react to it. There's that like kind of like a red glow just kind of sprawls across it. But however, as we see towards the end of the movie, instead of being ashamed of that side, that makes her different. She learns to accept it. And I think Zoe and Mira learn to do so as well. And then I want to talk about Celine's line when they're at the tree and then Rumi kind of slams her fist and she's like, oh no, when she's saying, all of me, and then like there's the ripple again. And then Celine says, she says, this is why we have to hide it. Our faults and fears must never be seen. It's the only way to protect the Honmun. Oh my gosh. When I see this, I'm like, okay, that's obviously this idea of perfection, hyper independence. So when I heard that, I thought, that's society speaking. It's pushing this idea that we need to be strong, perfect, hyper independent, not to accept help from anybody. You know, to be vulnerable is to be weak. It's very looked down upon and almost dishonorable to show any sign of weakness. And then at the end, when the girls come together and they're singing together, we see that they're a team and that they can be vulnerable with each other. They can be themselves fully and completely. They don't have to hide things from one another. They don't have to mask themselves or diminish themselves in any sort of way. When one of them falls behind or is maybe in a rough spot, like when they were fighting in the bathhouse, they each had each other's back. So in a way, they each became the family that they needed to each other. And also, the girls were so hesitant to attack Rumi, like during the Idol Awards. And I think someone even mentioned that they weren't even in like a full fighting stance. Sorry, I didn't realize the lighting was like that the whole time. So now that we've discussed societal expectations and influence and feeling of belonging within the film, let's talk about K-pop Demon Hunters from an Islamic standpoint. When I was watching it, yes, Guima, excuse my pronunciation, is depicted as a demon. However, I viewed him more as Satan. And no, hear me out. It's also the fact that he's literally depicted as this mouth of fire. And from what we've seen in this film, who knows? I remember seeing some theories that he's actually Rumi's dad. But I see him more as like an allegory for Shaitan. One message this film kind of seemed to push was the dangers of constantly giving into your desires and your whims, feeding your nafs, which is basically like the self, the ego. Music, let's talk about music. There's mixed views within Islam about the permissibility of music. I'm not here to give you an Islamic lecture, but just so you can understand if you're someone who isn't Muslim or someone who just doesn't know. Like, there are varying opinions on it. However, it's kind of like a general consensus that if the music is promoting things that are generally prohibited, like alcohol, adultery, things like that, then you typically want to stay away from it. As we know, music is made up of frequencies, and those frequencies actually impact the way we can feel. And that's just general science. So Trail Bliss mentions that research by Toma et al. 2013 demonstrated that listening to music activates brain regions associated with emotional regulation, leading to reduced anxiety and stress levels. A study by Chanda and Levitin 2013 found that music releases dopamine in the brain, fostering feelings of pleasure and relaxation. So that's what music does. It affects the way we feel, and that by nature affects the way we behave, the way we act. That's why it's so important to be mindful of the music and media we consume, because it all shapes us. Especially in today's day and age and in a postmodernist society, so much media is there to kind of just desensitize us and to cool our hearts, and that's why it's so important for us to protect our hearts and be mindful of the things that we consume. This isn't just about music or media or art or whatever it is that we consume. It's about our nafs, our ego, and then hawa, our desires. So the Saja Boys are a demonic boy band that are created to take souls to the underworld. So Saja in Korean means lion, and then Josang Saja is the Korean Grim Reaper. It escorts the souls into the Neverworld. So the Saja Boys are literally taking the souls of anyone who engages with or listens to their music. So like we literally see everyone ends up in a trance after the Idol Awards as they all walk to the tower, and Guima is in their ear. The song Your Idol that they perform at the tower was very eerie because it's very much about them taking full control of your life. Let me quote some of the lyrics. Just listen to the lyrics. Let's just go with verse 1. Keeping you in check, keeping you obsessed, play me on repeat. Anytime it hurts, play another verse. I can be your sanctuary. No, I'm the only one right now. I will love you more when it all burns down. More than power, more than gold. Yeah, you gave me your heart, now I'm here for your soul. Dang, that's scary. And honestly, that whole song, I was like, like not a song I'd promote. Like the purpose of human creation in Islam is to worship Allah. So when we're not worshiping God, or when we stray away from worshiping God, A'udhu Billah, what are we giving, like what do we end up worshiping next? Is it music? Is it other people and things? And it's not like literally physically worshiping somebody, but what are we giving our time to? If you're not worshiping God, then what are you worshiping? That's kind of how I understood it. Guima also has a very demeaning voice. And then one thing Gino mentioned was constantly hearing Guima's voice in his ear. And that reminded me a lot of waswas, which are basically whispers of shaitan that lead to doubt and negative thoughts. So he continues to feed these people these thoughts that they aren't good enough, that they can never be forgiven, or just fears like, oh, you don't have enough money, you don't have this, you don't have that. Gino's character, he rather than just like an honest mistake, he made a choice to go to the palace and leave his family behind. Because that was a choice he made, Guima made sure he felt extra guilty about it, I would say. He said that he wasn't worthy of redemption, worthy of forgiveness, and for a time, Gino did believe him, that he wasn't worthy of redemption, that he couldn't be forgiven, and that his mistakes were the only thing that defined him. Waswas is a very real thing that people struggle with. Religious scrupulosity, those are real struggles with Gino. There was no path to redemption because of his mistake and because he was already so far gone, far down the line, whatever. But Rumi kind of instilled this hope in him. If you have hope, that hope could get you through so much, because Rumi even mentioned that it wasn't up to anybody else to decide if she had hope. She had to make that decision for herself. And hope is such an incredible and powerful tool to have, because with hope and with a genuine belief that things will be all right, things become so much easier. It's kind of like the let them theory, but with just life. I know whatever's meant for you will come to you, and whatever's not will leave or just won't come to you. And that's okay. And I think that's why Islam is so beautiful. It's because we are constantly reminded of Allah's mercy, of God's mercy. So in Islam, Allah has 99 names, and 2 of those names are Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. And Rahman is the one who is attributed with mercy, and Ar-Rahim is the one who applies mercy upon his creation. God constantly reminds us of his mercy. I think that's absolutely beautiful. So one of my favorite surahs is Surah Nasr, or one of my favorite chapters is Surah Nasr, Surah 110, Ayah 3, which basically translates to, then glorify the praises of your Lord and seek his forgiveness, for certainly he is ever accepting of repentance. There's even a hadith. Abu Hurairah reported, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, verily Allah has 100 mercies, and he sent down a single part of them between the jinn, the humans, the animals, and the insects, by which they are compassionate and merciful to each other, such as the compassion of a beast for its offspring. Allah kept 99 mercies by which he will show mercy to his servants on the day of resurrection. So in the end, K-Pop Demon Hunters has a lot of themes that align with a lot of Islamic teachings, or that are kind of parallel to Islamic teachings in a way. And I think that's just really interesting to see, especially in modern media. It was a really exciting watch. I really enjoyed it, and it's such a pleasure, truly. Like watching the film, I was like, I need to make a video about this. This is really good. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really like talking about it. This film was actually so amazing and incredible. 5 stars. I might just rewatch it tonight. If you watched the film and have anything else you want to kind of talk about or analyze, feel free to comment it down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!